welcome everybody to this afternoon's session. I hope you've all enjoyed your lovely lunch and had a chance to collaborate and talk to new and old friends. And I'm sure a topic of conversation was the great work that we saw presented just before lunch on the results of the Legend diabetes study. And we already started to discuss a little bit about how we get that great wealth of evidence that has been generated through the Legend study into the hands of the people who need it. So how are we going to do that? And what are some of the strategies we can use to help foster the use of our evidence into healthcare to improve the lives of patients? So together with Marc Suchard, who is walking down the aisle, and myself, Nicole Pratt, it's my pleasure to introduce you to our panel session today. So the session is going to introduce you to a new partnership that has been formed between OHDSI and the Journal of the American College of Cardiology. So our panelists will discuss with you how together we can get better at translating our evidence so that we can achieve our mission of improving patient care. So panel members will have a chance to speak and then we'll open the floor for discussion. So please let's continue that really rich conversation we started just before the break. So first I'd like to introduce Harlan Krumholz, who's a cardiologist and scientist at Yale University and Yale New Haven Hospital and a Harold H. Hines Professor of Medicine. And he is the current editor-in-chief of JACC. Great. Next, Seng Yu, who is a professor of biomedical systems informatics at Yonsei University College of Medicine in South Korea. Many of you will know Chan. He is one of OHDSI's superstars and a fellow OHDSI Titan Award winner. And he's been really instrumental in advancing the mission of OHDSI through his leadership in network studies. And Chan is also an associate editor of JACC. And next we'll have Yuan Liu, who is an assistant professor of medicine, biomedical informatics and data science and epidemiology. It's a long title. Yuan's work focuses on the intersection of cardiovascular disease prevention, health equity, and digital health, and employing implementation science methods to address real-world issues. And Yuan is also an executive editor, associate editor of JACC, and a long-time collaborator at OHDSI. So now I'd like to invite Harlan to come and talk about how we can work together as a community to translate this wonderful evidence. So thanks, Harlan.
Thank you, Nicole. Okay. Hi. It's a pleasure to be with you. What an incredible community. I love the OHDSI community. I don't know, Patrick, you remember I gave a speech. Where were we then? It was in Bethesda, yeah, when we had the conference there, and it was such a privilege. And I think what excites me most is how well I resonate with the principles and aspirations of this community, which is really at its core to build relationships, to generate important knowledge that's going to help people, to help others with their own career development, and to commit to open science and transparency in the process of this. And as you know, this is a rare set of features in today's world. And this group continues to grow, get stronger, and represents a real worldwide impact. So it's a real privilege for me to speak to you. So I'm the editor-in-chief of the Journal of the American College of Cardiology now. I became editor in July. And JACC has a flagship journal, one of the leading cardiovascular journals. And as you can see, there are 9 other journals in this JACC group. It's maybe one of the more, or maybe the most influential group of journals in cardiology today. Let me tell you, I had no thought that I wanted to be editor. For a long time, I've been railing against the peer review literature medical industrial complex. You know, I co-founded medRxiv in part because I was done with peer review. I was so frustrated with the uneven quality, the long delays, the poor reviews, you know, the way that I was just being treated, where it wasn't as if I had good intentions, but as if I'm trying to get something, you know, across. And so actually when this position was posted, I didn't apply for it. Subsequently, the search firm reached out to me, and what I heard was that they were interested in some transformative change. that they recognized medical publishing is changing. There was some sense that maybe there hadn't been enough innovation in the area of medical publishing, and they wanted to see whether or not someone could come in and think differently about medical publishing. Well, that's music to my ears. You know, the notion that we can take a journal and think differently about it, and that we can move faster, wiser, that we can be more collaborative with our authors, that we can be more tuned to what readers need. And here was the important part for me, that we could understand this not as producing articles, not as publications, but as a platform for change that we could help bring about within the profession in the service of improving health. And so I immediately said, you know, we ought to adopt a vision to become the leading beacon for advancing global cardiovascular health. That's what we're about. That's going to be the end game. That's our key performance indicator. In the end, yeah, we've got to manage manuscripts and select wisely, help elevate them through peer review, ensure that they get published, try to make sure that they're disseminated. But in the end, you know, every single thing has to be said, what are you here for? You know, there's this famous quote where Kennedy runs into, John F. Kennedy is at NASA, and he runs into a janitor, you know, and he says, introduces himself, and he says, what's your job? And he turned to him and he said, I'm helping put someone on the moon. And I love that, because that is, you know, you have to say, what in the end are you really trying to accomplish? Everybody's got different roles, and that's what we can do with the journal. One of the first things I did was I reached out to George, and I reached out, you know, to Marc, and I said, we have a journal. What I mean by that? I meant Odyssey. I said, we have a journal now, because actually we can use this platform to advance observational methods, observational science, and help to provide that needed evidence. It's not going to come from the trials. And that's why I said, you know, you can say I've got the observational and I'm comparing it with the trial. I fully believe that they can have different results and both be right. Because they're in different populations. They're in one's in the real world wild. And there's lots of influences on whether or not something works in that setting. The other's usually highly selected individuals, but within highly selected environment, where a particular intervention is being deployed in a highly specific way. And if we're interested in understanding what's working in the real world, when does it not work? What is it that's leading us not to be able to optimize the potential for this to have the effect that we desire? Then we've got to be doing observational studies that both give us a sense of causal inference, but help us to understand what the underlying mechanism of something that fails to produce the benefit that we expect, or can help us understand the safety in dimensions and ways that the trials can never get to. So, you know, the American JACC is an outlet of the American College of Cardiology, which is a key medical society that seeks to improve cardiovascular outcomes. But the beauty is, although that mission is admirable, there is a firewall. It's an independent journal that's able to make choices and decisions that stand for itself. Now, let me say, I've been so frustrated, like with JAMA for all those years, where, you know, what they said was every time I published an article that had causal inference, they made me strip the article of any causal language. Now, it's one thing to say you need to soften the conclusions. You need to make sure you identify the limitations. You need to be able to say, you know, how strong is this causal inference that you're making? But to suggest that I'm doing an association study when the whole thing is set up to try to understand causal inference, whether something worked or not in the real world, is folly. Now they've backed off that now. They finally, and by the way, almost like every 6 months, I would say to them, this is lunacy, you know, that you're basically taking scientists who are setting up a data experiment, and then you're telling them you can't tell anyone it was a data experiment. So, you know, but now we have a journal that really, I would say, fully embraces the idea that there is potential in observational science to produce evidence that can move practice. But only if it's done well. And so we've been talking a lot about the importance of ensuring what these well-designed observational study. These can also provide, of course, epidemiologic insights and help us understand global impact. There's many facets to this. I'll move along because I want to be able to get to a discussion. But we've got to be able to set standards and write about this in ways. So if we think negative controls is a good idea, it's not enough to put it in the Journal of the American Informatics Association. You know, we need to continue to pound these messages. We need to disseminate and help our colleagues understand that there are important differences among the spectrum of observational studies that are published. There are important differences. They are not one size fits all. By the way, that's true in randomized trials as well. But it's particularly true in observational research. And so we need to take it on as a movement. How are we going to elevate this? What are the exact methods that were used? Can we trust them? What's the data source? What's the quality of that data? Are we doing study design diagnostics? Are we doing diagnostics for residual systematic error? What do we think about the data themselves? The Legend Project for me is an exemplar. It's an exemplar. A lot of the work has been done. Of course, we have all these checklists but journals really only pay lip service to them, and they don't really, I think, in the end, fully elevate the field. We have a journal that we can do meta research, we can do commentaries, we can do original research. We ought to take it as a challenge to see what can we do with this that would be the most. So in closing, I just want to emphasize that I consider JACC more than a journal. It's a platform. My term, which can be, it's 5 years with 5 years additional, it can be for 10 years, a decade. It will have been a failure if all we did was publish a lot of good articles. It will be a failure if all we did was pay attention to some stupid metric like the impact factor. It will have been a success if we're able to move the research enterprise itself towards a higher level, if we're able to help readers discern the difference between good research and bad research, if we're able to connect with guideline writers and policymakers so that they understand that observational research, well conceived, well executed, using good databases, can actually advance clinical care, population health, and ultimately individuals' opportunities to live long and healthy lives. And this means we're thinking about effectiveness, we're thinking about efficiency, we're thinking about equity, we're thinking about patient-centeredness, timeliness, and safety, the qualities of a good healthcare system. All of these are good targets for us. But we also have to be able to elevate the methods and the ability of people to discriminate between them. So I invite you to join us as contributors, as reviewers, as consultants. Chan and Yuan are associate editors. This is an open invitation. I was dreaming that we could be able to build partnerships and put together ways, joint symposia, other things. There's nothing that's off the table. And we should be pushing the boundaries of real-world evidence, ensuring that every study that's published meets the highest standards of rigor, transparency, and impact. And I think we can do that together. So thank you so much.
I'm Chan, and I'm going to tell about the poor translation of evidence from observational study into clinical practice in evidence-based medicine framework. So basically, the evidence-based medicine is defined as the conscientious, explicit, and judicious use of current best evidence in making decisions about the care of individual patients. And why was the evidence-based medicine born? Let's start with the example from the past. On the left side, you can see the cumulative meta-analysis of the thrombolytic therapies for the patients with acute myocardial infarction. The center line is indicating the odds ratio of 1.0, and then each dot represents the best estimates of the treatment effects of the thrombolytic patients, thrombolytic therapy in these patients, which shows the cumulative effect estimates. And then you can see that initially the confidence intervals are very wide, but by the time we reached the 10 trials, it's clear that thrombolytic therapy is beneficial in the patient with acute myocardial infarction. But still, there is a little uncertainty remains. But after 30 trials like here, you can see that it's really obvious that thrombolytic therapy is beneficial in the patient with acute myocardial infarction. But still, this evidence has not been translated into the guidelines, textbooks by the authors. After that, an additional 40,000 patients were enrolled in the further trials after the answer was already known. So we have to answer why was this necessary? That's why the evidence-based medicine is born. So, it took nearly a decade for experts to take this evidence into their clinical practice, into their textbook, into their clinical guidelines. So, once again, the definition of the evidence-based medicine is that the conscious, explicit, and judicious use of current best evidence in making decisions about the care of individual patients. And I think that, this is a very provocative and innovative concept at the time, even though I was not in the academia at the time. But on the right top corner, you can see the pyramid of evidence-based medicine, which is really familiar to you. And then, it replaces the RCT's evidence at the top and followed by the observational research with cohort study. And on the very bottom there was expert opinions. So you can see that it's the experts at the time declare that we cannot rely on the experts' opinions in decision making. Even less than animal studies or other case series studies. But the hierarchy established by the EBM was a major step forward in healthcare. But how well is it being followed today? Let's look at the more recent examples on the right panel. In the LEGEND hypertension study, we found that the clothalidone, which is more clothalidone. Which is an diuretic, is not superior than hydrochlorothiazide in patients with hypertension. Many experts at the time believed that clothalidone would be better than hydrochlorothiazide because it is more potent drugs for the hypertension. After that, at the paper named Guideline-Driven Management of Hypertension on Evidence-Based Update, written by the experts like Dr. Harley, Wright, Taylor, and Walton. They said that they just chose not to adopt the current best evidence at the time, and just they decided to wait the upcoming randomized clinical trial, the DCT trial, and then DCT trials actually just confirm this evidence, and then in the DCP trial they found that clothalidone is not better than hydrochlorothiazide. So cardiology is a field that had led the change in adopting evidence-based medicine, but there is still much to be done in terms of translating real-world evidence into clinical practice. Once again, medical field has done an excellent job of refining the standards and criteria for evaluating findings from RCTs, but it's not really clear in terms of the observation study. Which observation study is better? Which observation study is reliable? We do not have very strict and transparent criteria for evaluating the results from the observation study. Through Odyssey, we have access to a global network of observation data combined with advanced method to generate robust real-world evidence systematically. But despite the potential, observation studies have often been dismissed due to concerns about false positivity or poor study qualities. So I believe this is why I believe the JACC-OHDSI partnership is so critical. Through this partnership, I think we can start to establish similar rigorous criteria for observation studies, helping us determine when these results can be trusted, and more importantly, when these results cannot be trusted. And then by building this framework, we can ensure that reliable observation evidence is incorporated into practice much faster, ultimately improving patient care around the world. Thanks.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Yuan. Nice to see everyone here, and thank you, Harlan and Chen, to talk about the vision of JACC and the future of cardiovascular research. I feel fortunate to be part of the OHDSI community, contributing to Legend Hypertension and Legend Diabetes, and also associate editor and JACC. So as we look forward, I would like to expand a little bit on what Harlan mentioned, to dive deeper on the clinical question that we at OHDSI as a community can tackle. So we have a tremendous opportunity in front of us. I think the OHDSI and JACC collaboration allow us to leverage the vast amount of data and to tackle some of the most pressing issues in cardiovascular care. In the end, it's not just improved treatment strategy, improved personalized care, but ultimately provide ways to improve patient outcome. I think our focus is to deliver the high impact and actionable insights from this data. And I'm just going to provide some of the example that I have the opportunity to participate and think about how we can tackle in cardiovascular care. I think the first one is to focus on underserved population and health equity. For example, cardiovascular disease disproportionately affects people in low income, minority population in the rural area. And many of these patients are rarely included in randomized control trial. And the vast data that OHDSI community has provided an opportunity to look into that. One of the examples is the Legend Hypertension study. When we look at combination therapies, there is little guidance on what might be the best drug or safe drug to add after monotherapy. And let alone when we talk about minority like African American or stratified by age, sex, and race and some comorbidities. And collaborating with OHDSI community, we have the opportunity to work with data partners. First, look at the utilization of combination drugs in the population, but also evaluate the potential comparative effectiveness and safety and the heterogeneity in terms of how this effectiveness and safety different by age, sex, and race and different demographic subgroups. I think this is particularly helpful and fill in the gaps into the guideline. When we look at the guideline, there's needs of evidence, at least from observational study, to support the guideline recommendation. The randomized control trials just don't have, it's very time consuming, expensive, and don't have the power to look at population subgroups, especially the vulnerable population. And the guideline committee are in need of evidence to support the recommendation. So OHDSI can provide one of the best observational evidence, non-randomized observational evidence to support the guideline much better than expert opinion. And the second one is focused on special population. Some of the population, like elderly population, there's also underrepresented in clinical trial. So in the Legend Diabetes study, we can look at safety issue of this GLP-1, SGLT2, these novel anti-diabetic drugs. What are the safety issues in elderly population? These populations have unique feature, and we need to take into account fragility and some other feature of this population and provide the evidence that could support the guideline and clinical practice. And then the third one I think would be possible is to look at patient phenotyping and risk stratification, potentially combine artificial intelligence like machine learning and the big data that we have to look at patient subgroups that are most benefit from some treatment. Some of the clinical trial, many of the clinical trials, they only provide result for the whole population, but maybe there are some patient subgroups could be benefit from the treatment. And many of the paper, they may have post hoc analysis of clinical trial, but I think the OHDSI has the big power to look at not just one dog, but many thousands of dogs that support the robustness of this evidence. So it really helps to improve personalized care and identify which patient subgroup may be most benefit from this treatment. Finally, I think OHDSI also provide an opportunity to identify new research frontier. As Scott from the VA already mentioned, we can link genetic data with electronic health record data. We can also link geocoding information, like social determinant of health, geocoded at the census block or census tract level, and potentially integrating with patient self-reported data from other study to have a more holistic view to tackle problem in the cardiovascular care. I think in the end, when we look forward, there's so many potential, and the OHDSI and JACC provide collaboration, providing a great platform for us to, as a team, to tackle this problem together and really set the standard to the audience to say what might be the best observational study look like. As associate editor in JACC, I screen many of the manuscripts as they submitted to JACC, but I noticed many of the paper, they are at a low quality. So there are observational study, but there's also good and bad observational study. So I think OHDSI has been doing a great job in identifying the guiding principles for doing good observational study. And as a JACC, as a journal, we can showcase to the audience and the readers what might be the examples of good observational study, and also educate the clinical community about that. In the end, we have the opportunity to make the world better and finally improve patient outcome. Thank you.
Working? Okay. Oh, maybe that's not working. Is that on? Yep. Okay. So we have, I think, 15 minutes for some good discussion. So if you do have a question, please come up to the mic. As people do that, I'm going to quickly ask a question of the panel, including Marc. So what do you think OHDSI can do for JACC in this collaboration, and what can JACC do for OHDSI? What should we be prioritising? I'm going to start with you.
You start with me. And here I thought, as a moderator, I got to ask the first question. Not at all. Harlan mentioned that we as OHDSI, we now have a journal. It's exciting, right? And a journal that the American College of Cardiology and Harlan and our community would like to change what it means to, what a nugget of scientific delivery and information means. Chan highlighted that we've been working very hard over the last decade in deciding what represents rigorous observational research that perhaps has the same value or more value because of its representativeness than randomized controlled trials. And Yuan highlighted that as a large distributed network, we have access and the responsibility to engage patient lives that cover many of those populations that are underrepresented in current research. And then we need to deliver that evidence through a journal. So my question of what OHDSI can offer is the idea of what that delivery looks like. It's not necessarily a single paper on a single comparison for a single outcome. In order to have reliable observational evidence where we can be assured that residual systematic error is missing, we need to be looking at things large scale. But what I don't know, and how I'm going to pass this question along, is what that publishable unit looks like. We're no longer confined to a single paper. We have a large number of artifacts, many of which are null, but those nulls are critically important for us to be assured that our type 1 error or our reliability is kept in line. So how can we use a journal to help distribute the evidence that one really needs to demonstrate reliability outside of the single target comparator, was there a heart attack or not? And maybe Chan's a good place to start with that one, because I know we've actually had discussions about this.
So, the first question about what Odyssey can do for JACC and then what JACC can do for Odyssey. So first of all, I think, that once again, there is no very clear criteria to evaluate the reliability of observation study. And one of the most important strengths of studies in Odyssey is that, we set the diagnostics before executing the study, and then we decide whether to accept or not based on the results from the diagnostics. So we conducted identical studies across the different data sources. We do not accept every results from the data sources. We judge whether it is reliable or not to be reflected to the final results. I hope that Odyssey network conduct more experiments about the criteria how we can evaluate the reliability of the results from the observation study, and then JACC can disseminate the results of the Odyssey, and we together with Yuan and Harlan we try to educate the other editors or reviewers about the best practice of the observation study and what is the value of observation studies. We try to challenge the current concept of the observation study. In cardiology, the RCT is one of the best. It is truly one of the best evidence, but it is one of the golden standard that we cannot challenge it. But we try to challenge these concepts in the journal. So together with Harlan, I want to change the current landscape of the evidence-based medicine. That's what JACC can, do in the future.
I think all that's well said. Let me tell you what I want to do, and I'll work with anyone in the room. I really do think that meta-research is an important area. And part of it is to illuminate the heterogeneity that exists within the current literature. You heard about these things called LLMs? I don't know if you heard about them, but this is a powerful way, of course, to evaluate unstructured data. If we want to do massive reviews of the literature, we can. And we can talk about, what % of the literature are employing any of these kinds of strategies that we're talking about. I guarantee you, we can validate the ability to evaluate large swaths of the literature and to expose the issue and to create the demand for higher quality. In addition, we can be exemplars for showing what higher quality looks like, and then through these kind of commentaries and other sources, do. But I'm willing to work with anyone on these sort of meta-research opportunities, because I think we have to defrost the status quo. We have to make people a little uncomfortable about what's been going on, but not to, in sort of a broad brush say, okay, that's why observational studies are no good and we shouldn't be using them, but to help people understand the spectrum of quality that exists within this area. And I think it can be a very powerful way for us to be able to push forward. The other that I suggested was when we have strong observational research that we think ought to be used for practice, then we ought to defend that. We ought to come out and make recommendations for what guidelines should pay. Why should they pay attention to this observational work? My last thing is, historically, journals produce static articles of record. There's a reason for that. It's an article of record. It's intended to be a point in time. But at JACC, we also have a website. If there are simulations that we want to run, if we want to be able to put things where readers can come and feel for themselves what it looks like, in the same way you've got already on Odyssey, but now we can use it and promote it on the JACC website for appropriate either commentaries or special contributions or for articles. We can do that. So let's take advantage of that to the most extent we can.
Yeah, and just want to add to that. I think at JACC we can also we invite you to submit papers from Odyssey, and then if we accept it, it's also providing opportunity for us to amplify the study finding. So, for example, we also have JACC Asia collaboration, where we're going to translate some of the contents into local language, like in Chinese, in Korean, in Japanese, to really promote the study in local setting. And we are also providing podcasts, interviewing with the authors, what they think about the added value from the study, and could be promoted on the website. And in addition to be an author, I also invite you to be a reviewer, I would say, reviewer for observational study. We have receiving lots of submissions from all over the world of observational study, and we're also looking for reviewers who can provide the judgment, like rigorous judgment of the paper. So that could be an important contribution to that as well.
I want to tell you two other quick things that we've done for people who want to submit. One is we said your paper, your way. I don't care about formatting. I don't want anyone to waste any time formatting references. I don't want to spend I've spent too much of my life on this stuff, right? Just put it in. If it looks like it's going to progress, we will work with you on it. And the other thing is we want rapid assessments. So basically 50% of decisions are within 2 days. And so if it's not right, we'll tell you within 2 days. Another 25% or within a week, we'll let you know. And that may not just be the quality, it may be the fit or how it goes, but we're committed to doing that. We want to be able to get back to you if it has progressed with reviews. We want to do that within 3 weeks. And we're just saying, if it's important work, it shouldn't sit. And so in the same way we were thinking, how do we move things along? But I don't want you getting it back in 2 days and say, well, I spent a week formatting it. I don't care. Just put it in, whatever it, obviously it should, the more it looks like an article, the more professional, it's cognitively, it looks like it, you want to make it look good, but I don't care. I don't want to be bespoke, no specific, requirements for JACC. Just send it in. No, special this, special. Even we had central illustration. So if you don't want to put one in, we'll work with you if it progresses. Don't waste the time now. Just let us take a look and we'll give you an answer.
Sorry, Danny, go ahead. Oh. Do you want to perhaps go over to that one, Danny?
Go ahead. We'll get back to it.
Oh, we'll get back.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Sorry. Thank you, everyone. Cardiology is clearly an area where there's a lot of innovation going on with, new medical devices, new surgical procedures, and that's clearly an area where there's a lack or a scarcity of really good trial data. Can you comment on your appetite for the Odyssey community to produce information, observational research on those gaps that exist, on what devices work best or are safer or more effective in the space of cardiology, or more generally speaking?
I think it's all fair game. You just have to understand whether or not you have the information that's necessary. So, for example, if we're looking at, I'm very interested in these Impella devices. People are in cardiogenic shock, and these are very expensive, high technology, high risk devices that people put in. But if you don't know the blood pressure when people come in, you don't know, it's very hard to be able to get by the selection bias, or at least also get by convincing anyone, even if you've done a good job, that you've done it. So you've got to say, where's the sweet spot for this? Where do I have a good comparator versus, when we're comparing with nothing, that's always hard. When we actually have, that's why in the blood pressure I thought was so good. Really no one knows the answer, and it wasn't versus, no treatment. It was versus alternative treatments. But again, you've got to make the case. There's a strong appetite for it, but we just have to be able to figure out what's the right methods. Imagine an opinion piece we published. How do you use observational data to create causal inference? Let's set standards for what that would be so that, again, we're able to differentiate what's worthwhile and what's not.
Thank you.
Hi, Chris Lyon, McGill University. Thanks for a great session. It's, I guess, so part comment, part question. I'm particularly interested in cardiometabolic diseases, and one of the challenges we have in pharmacoepi in cardiometabolic diseases is when we go to clinical journals, the quality of the reviews can be very variable. In particular, there's still a hang-up on a P of less than 0.05. There's an underappreciation for the importance of null results that can be incredibly reassuring, particularly regarding drug safety. And we're also faced with the challenge of it being a field, it's the land of the mega trial. Whereas in some fields, a trial of 100 people is considered huge, and in cardiology, that's the pilot study to the pilot study. So I guess my question is, how do we do a better job as editors, as associate editors, as a field, in terms of educating reviewers on how to better appreciate these studies?
So there's a couple of things. One, we need, of course, expert reviewers who know what they're doing and appreciate these issues that you bring up. But I'll tell you one quick thing that we're doing at JACC now, which is we're bringing more eyes on each paper. So what we've done is built a group of consultants, large group of consultants. So a paper comes in, it gets seen by an executive associate editor. Yuan serves in this role also, in addition to being an associate editor. And then if it progresses, at least two people see it, that executive associate and I review it. But also if it's like in play, we're sending it out for review, but we're also asking maybe 4 to 6 to 8 experts to weigh in on it. It also brings it sort of deflects about bias, because if you just get one reviewer, you don't even know what that person's history is with these authors or history is with this issue necessarily. There's a whole lots of ways, and we just think more eyeballs on any piece brings in different perspectives, and then we have to have an open mind about where does this stand? Is this going to be an important contribution? But if we get more experts in this consultancy, we're asking people within 2 days, just give us your gut on this thing. Is it promising or is it not? What do you like about it? What don't you like about it? Not doing a deep review, but complementing the deep reviews. Now we've got a more balanced look of the editorial team. Expert consultants who we trust and understand their expertise. And now the reviewers are coming in. So now we can have more confidence in the decisions we're making. But it's an innovation we're trying to do, which is bring in more eyes, but do it, with rapid cycle.
Perfect. Thank you.
Chidi Rakusan from FDA. So I don't know, anyone on the panel might have seen a series of articles in JAMA back in the 90s. It was a series where each month there was guidance on how do you critically read the literature. And, okay, we've got one nodding. In my demographic cohort. So I'm thinking about what you're describing here as an opportunity to do a monthly series and tell people this is how we think as Odyssey, how observational studies should be done. And using examples from the many hundreds, I guess maybe thousands of Odyssey publications, and particularly around legend and all the work that's been done, but taking an opportunity to teach, an opportunity, to kind of step by step bring people along, because, as those of us who've been to 10 Odyssey symposiums now, or however many there have been, each year we hear about some amazing new step forward and how we're using the data and the tools that we're using. And it seems to me that given the opportunity here with your journal to use it as, because there's, we know that Odyssey publications are kind of all over the literature, right? But here, if you can point to a series, a monthly series, and guide people, these are the important concepts that we think you should incorporate when you're doing an observational study.
And ultimately it can become the Book of Odyssey focused not on specific users who are coding, but Book of Odyssey for readers, consumers, reviewers, editors. It's a different Book of Odyssey, but I'd be all in for that. I think it would be amazing.
Sounds like we have a fantastic call to arms and an entire community to start writing these tutorials.
And we can do videos and other derivative content. And let me say, the idea is that it's a cardiovascular journal, but if we do this right, everyone will benefit. We're not just trying to speak to the cardiovascular audience. We're just using. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to go. I was just going to say, before getting involved in efficacy and safety, I really had no interest in cardiovascular or metabolic health. Cardiologists are really just glorified plumbers. And I suspect that view is held by many in the community. How can we look at this model or use this model to move into other professional societies? Is it possible?
100%. We got to start somewhere, but it's got to spread. It's got to spread.
Yeah, I think so, because cardiology was the leading leading fields in the medicine, promoting the evidence-based medicine, and it is one of the leading field in the, especially in the observation study as well. That's why we conducted legend hypertension and legend diabetes for the cardiovascular outcomes. So, and I think we can spread this innovation to other fields in the medicine, and cardiology can lead this.
So a second call to arms, those of you interested in oncology, even ophthalmology, these types of partnerships can really help our larger community grow across all of health.
Okay. Well, I think that has come to the end of our session. So once again, I want to thank our panel. So please, a round of applause for our panel. Okay, and start writing, everybody.